Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to Synchronicity Web TV. I am your host, Nadiya Shah, and this is your moment of synchronicity. Well, I'm so excited to celebrate with you today, Victoria Almiroty. Now, Victoria and I are really meeting for the first time. I've talked with her a little bit off camera, and she is brilliant and fun. And so I know I'm going to have a lot of fun celebrating her and learning all about children's astrology charts together with you. And it is Victoria that is coming to Synchronicity University as part of the March 2024 speaker series, where she's going to teach about children's astrology charts as well. So there's lots to learn here as she talks about three big celestial events that happen that transition us into teenagehood. And I'm looking forward to reflecting on my teenagehood through Victoria now. So Victoria, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Nadiya. Thank you for welcoming me. Thank you for finding me. Thank you for reaching out. And it's lovely synchronicity to meet you and to your fabulous audience, like you like saying, the fabulous pupils and students. I love that.
Yes. It's interesting because that was like something I started saying from the very first videos I posted 15 years ago, just over 15 years ago. And it's because that's how I literally talk. Like I would literally, when I'd walk down the street and I'd see a friend, I'd say, hello, fabulous Michael, and all of that. So it was the most natural thing. And I love how it's resonated with people. And even you here were like, fabulous, fabulous. I love that.
I'm so happy that you find interesting children's natal charts. Why do you think, how do you feel attracted to that area of astrology?
Well, it's really interesting because we want to empower people with astrology, usually most astrologers, at least that I know. But then you think about how children are, they're so untapped into, right? It's like clay. It's like this silly putty, as we say, where they really can be anything. So there's always this balance between guiding people so that they can be better parents to their children, because normally children themselves don't come to astrologers. But at the same time, you want to guide them, but you don't want to say, oh boy, watch out, this kid, when he turns 18, this is what's going to happen. It's going to be really spooky. You don't want to do that either. And I know it's like that for all of us, like at any age as astrologers, we want to empower people, but especially with parents, when it is that they're trying to tap into astrology to help their children, it becomes that much more important. So that's one part of it. And the other part of it is just thinking about my own childhood, right? If you're looking at children's astrology, looking at the chart from the perspective of, how was I tapping into this when I was 12 years old? What happened to me? And it's fascinating to consider that as well.
Yeah, well, two things that you mentioned that are very, very important. Children, and especially teenagers, whom I love, I adore that face, now that I understand it more deeply, they are full of potential. No? Children and teenagers everything is possible. Like you say, they are clay, everything's possibility. They are pure and neuroplastic. They are very neuroplastic. They have, everything is yes, everything is maybe, everything is possible already. And then on the other side, it's very important to consider that if you're going to talk to someone about themselves as a child, or to people about, or parents or people that work with children, very important that, especially if it's a niece or if it's a daughter, a son, to be very careful and focus on the positive, because children, I'm a mom of two boys now, 16 and 13, my teachers, they are my teachers, and I've been an astrologer since before, but I focus on children's astrology since I became a mother, and I became obsessed. Oh, can I see your boy's natal chart? Can I see your twins' natal chart? Can you see? I can give you feedback. You give me your information and I can give you feedback on them. Oh, your son or daughter is so athletic or so whatever, creative, and I have a file of almost all of I'm a pest of all the children that cross my life, and so I found so much interesting things. But always very important as a psychologist and as an astrologer, focus on the positive always with children and with parents, focus on the positive. Because as you said, you cannot tell them, oh, watch out, at 18, Pluto is going to reach his Aquarius moon. No, we don't. So if you're going to give that kind of information, you have to be able to give some answer or some constructive approach, tools to the person. So if you're going to, because I prefer to be a good person rather than prove my powers as an astrologer, and not be a Plutonian astrologer. I'd rather be a good person, so, and say, don't worry, you'll get there. Yes, and a lot of empathy with parents, because sometimes, I'm I'm from Argentina, and people maybe in Latin America open up very much, and they say, oh, Victoria, is it okay to feel lonely as a mother? Yes, it's okay. So this empathy is so important. Or it's sometimes I feel like I felt lonely when I was a child. Can you see that in my chart? Something wrong with me, so open up yourself as well. No, so it's every time I work with children, which I love, and with the parents, of course, it's very moving for me. It's and having children in your life, whatever form, is a great opportunity to become a better person. And every time I do a consultation with parents, it's an occasion for me to check up on my parenting skills, to practice what I preach, to walk the talk, or how you say it in English, but it's so funny because one of my boys thinks I'm a fairy, as I told you before, and one of my other ones thinks I'm a bad witch, So it's so interesting how each children can see you from a different perspective, and you never know of the plethora of things that you are as a parent, what your child will connect with. Sometimes some Cancer moms say, I cannot believe it, I'm a Cancer, and my firstborn has a Capricorn moon, and they are, how come? And they are lowering the heat level, putting more heat in the house, making their house warmer. And it's so interesting because maybe there's a new level of Capricorn in yourself that he needs to connect with. Sometimes they need to connect with your Capricorn side. It's not like, oh no, I'm a bad mother, he came with a moon conjunct Saturn. Sometimes being an astrologer can be quite neurotic. You understand what I mean? So, or maybe you have a niece or some children in your life, and you have an angular Pluto, a Pluto conjunct Sun, or Pluto conjunct the nodes or the moon, and you feel guilty. So, my approach is very constructive on finding new levels, and I find that very, very interesting. And teenage years have become very, very complicated, because teenagers know so much, have so much bits and bytes of information, but they don't have the experience. They have the access to the information, but they don't have the knowledge and the experience, but they think they know everything. Well, that entitlement is universal to teenagers, but some teenagers are more persistent and more flamboyant and more outraged, more courageous. And what other word would you add, Nadiya? To
confident,
more
bold, intelligent, intellectual,
bold.
more book oriented, more quiet. Yeah, like all the different things that different children can be. We can see certain inclinations in the chart for sure, but then it's also like what they do, especially with those early aspects. And I know that there are certain transits that do usher children from purely childhood into the teen years. Now, I do want to also preface that by saying, I was thinking about something from my 20s, right? Like the other day, I was thinking, oh, I can't believe I did that. And then I said to myself, I was a kid. I was a child, basically, right? This is me thinking about myself in my 20s. And so I know it's kind of relative, right? But really, when you are not yet a teenager, you truly are, as we've been saying, that silly putty. You truly are like showing some inclinations that show up in the chart, but it also depends on the environment that you're in and how much it supports you. feeling safe to bring out certain inclinations or not, because different kids will bring the same archetype. Like for example, lots and lots of people have Moon conjunct Saturn. I love that you mentioned that, because I have met many a mom who has some astrological knowledge and will say, "Oh my God, my kid hates me. My kid is not going to like, I'm doing this. I'm doing," right? They think that when they see that in their kids' charts, that that's not necessarily what it could mean. It could mean a few other things, but yeah, there might be a time in that kid's life when they really don't, when they do see their mom as a very strict principal. As I'm talking to you now, and before we get into the aspects, I do want to share, I just remembered something, and that is I was incredibly rebellious as a teenager. I mean, I was a rebel without a clue, as they say. Rebellious like you wouldn't believe. I was so rebellious. Like you couldn't tell me anything, right? And it's still like when I was a child or a kid, I made up this song, and my dad still sometimes sings this song to me. And it basically is, "You can't control me. You can't control me."
Wow.
I can't believe it now. I'm remembering this. But I mean, I do have the sun a square Uranus in my chart. It is the dominant thing in my chart, is my sun square Uranus. So it's interesting how I ended up living that out by creating this song as a child, and it being the thing that just continues to stand out. So it's kind of incredible. But, for me, one of the many reasons I chose not to have children was because I was thinking, oh gosh, what would I do with a teenager who was like I was as a teenager? I was like, oh boy, I don't know
Yeah.
how my parents did it. I really, really don't. I was something else. So
Well, it's so nice that you open up and you share that lovely anecdote. Now you can laugh about it, and your father loves you and laughs with you, I'm sure. But it's very moving. People that get introduced or start swimming in children's natal chart, like these memories start emerging, and it's quite moving. So your Chiron moves, your moon moves, your memories moves, so your vulnerability moves. So it's quite growing experience. So what just happened right now is what you can expect in this type of course.
wow. And yeah, and this type of reading as well, right? Like how you use these skills
Yeah,
to
that type of
facilitate an understanding. The things that people remember is kind of incredible. And so I do know, as we have touched on, I know that Victoria is going to go into the really three big transits that everyone goes through right around the same age, that usher someone from being a child into being a teenager. And you will learn so much more from Victoria at Synchronicity University, because she is coming as part of the March 2024 speaker series. And you've got a limited time left to choose your tuition rate, as low as just $5 a class, to learn from Victoria and other incredible astrologers as well. So let's jump in, Victoria. The first aspect that I think of at 12 years old, everybody has their very first Jupiter return. So how do you understand the first Jupiter
Yeah.
return?
Well, that's very important because that's the debut of astrology teenager years. So, from the astrological point of view, teenage as the teenage years start with the Jupiter return. So sometimes teenage years start astrologically at 11 years and a half, sometimes 12 years and a couple of months. So when Jupiter returns, which is an average of 12 years, but it's 11.6 or sometimes a little bit more, depends on the year. So that is the first, the world opens up. Usually the teenage goes from primary school to secondary school. So it really opens up completely. So in my case, at that time, I changed from one school to another school at that Jupiter return, and and that happened in my first house, and so I needed to open up my life, my world. So it's, well, anyway, what I wanted to say is that the Jupiter return is like mega synapses. Neurologically, there is your brain starts doing more connections. This is neurologically proven, and you are more neuroplastic and doing more neurological wiring. So it's crazy synapses, and it's so much information, and your world opens up and your mind expands, and so does your action. You become more courageous, more daring, more rebellious. So, and at 12 years, as every even year, you have a Mars return. So usually it's a Mars return with a Jupiter return, and may I add, the Uranus activation, because Uranus, usually the planet of your rule, one of the more ruler of Aquarius. You're an Aquarius, and a very important planet nowadays, because Pluto has just entered Aquarius. So Uranus is in sextile with natal Uranus. So it's the electricity and the audacity and the daredevil, part of and the rebellious and innovative side of the teenage is very, very exacerbated. And Uranus is also a symbol, or yes, where you look for the neurological wiring as well. Just Mercury and Uranus in children are very important, the first transits to those planets, as well as to house 3rd and 11th, to see how the neurological wiring is doing, and how, if the kid is kinesthetic, or is more auditive, or is more I don't know, some are more observant, the different type of learnings. But Uranus very activated, and Jupiter growing, waxing, waxing, you say, when Jupiter is growing.
Yes,
Yes.
waxing.
So you're waxing Jupiter, and waxing Uranus. So rebellious, courageous, and the world is yours. So how can you regulate? How can you put a stop if your teenage is out of control and it's so hard? So you need to find the Lord Saturn. Saturn it's going to the opposition, because, as you may know, every multiple of 7, Saturn comes into opposition. Usually it's at 14 years old. So the worst part of the teenage years, astrologically, is from the Jupiter return to the Saturn opposition in transits to the natal chart. So that gap, Jupiter return, which can be at 11 and 6 months, to Saturn opposition Saturn, which can be from 14 to 15 and a half years old. So that interval will give you the challenging part for the parents. So, but that Saturn is very important, because it depends where it is natally, and where it's transiting, to see where he or she will need some regulation. So the first things first, Saturn opposition Saturn, the teenage does not identify with the natal rules. The Saturn in his natal chart is by transit opposition. So I oppose to these rules. I want another rules. So usually that rules come from outside. So, as you may know, Nadiya, we need at least 15 other adults to it takes a village to raise a child. Well, that village is in an average of 15 other adults, because if mom and dad are not having a good day, we need other people. Yes, we need teachers, we need sports mentors, tutors, we need a lot of help, we need neighbors, we need other parents, we need family if we have them. So that Saturn usually comes from school, the director of some teacher, usually it's not you yourself that they respect the most, or they first have to corroborate outside to see if what mom and dad are saying is good or bad. Anyway, working on that Saturn transit, seeing where does your child needs the regulation and where is he finding the limit, will help you put more consciousness and understand and understanding the natal Saturn of your child, understand how limit goes. If he or she has a Saturn in water element, so it's more emotional, the limit. No, you can feel, you need to connect with the feelings. If it's in air, you need to talk, and with earth, be very practical and very consistent. And with fire, well, you have to put your body, and okay, if you raise a little bit your voice, or maybe you can run a race with him or her, like put some fire to that Saturn. So there are different, I give lots of examples of this, of how can you help your child grasp their Saturn so that they don't stray or go too far, in their rebellions. Okay, in your case, Nadiya, because you turn out to be a great innovator, and you are, for me, the first astrologer that was like a huge success in YouTube. You were the first YouTuber astrologer, or not?
There were a few of us at the very beginning. There were, but I don't know exactly when and whom was the technically first. I do remember that I was sharing, and there really weren't many astrologers. And then at some point, after about a year or two, I remember there were a few more of us, but we kind of knew each other. We were kind of communicating. And then it's just continued from there. And I know that I have had acknowledgments, right? I've been recognized as someone who tapped into this brand new platform, this new way of sharing astrology. And when I started doing it, it was just so different and weird. Like it was, for lack of a better way of putting it, I remember somebody saying to me, wow, it's a really different way of delivering astrology. Like, it's just something that hasn't really been done before, thought of before. And at that point, I was already, doing quite a bit. Horoscopes, yes, but interviews as well online. So I think that there were probably a few of us, not just in astrology, but new age topics in general, who probably recognized that potential, or, that could be there. For me, I just remember I just wanted to empower myself. I just wanted to do something. I wanted to share. I felt like I had so much to give as an astrologer. I wanted to inspire people. And so, yeah, I remember my first videos went up in 2008. And so really back then, really there was a very small handful. So I don't know who was
Pluto
the
in Capricorn, with Pluto in Capricorn.
Pluto would have just entered Capricorn. Exactly. Yeah. I think that was when the potential of what this could be professionally started showing up for people, which is why those of us who are kind of sensitive to energies probably picked up on it.
And you, if you don't mind telling your moon sign, your moon is Sagittarius. And
oh, yes, I tell a lot of
I
people.
would teach parents that. Yeah, I love your moon. And so the moon is what yes or yes will happen in your life. So your moon is Sagittarius. So yes, you are going to be a teacher, and yes, you are going to travel, and yes, you if you believe in other lives, the moon is usually what we remember for previous lifetimes, and so you have a very on the tip of yourself the teacher that you must have been before.
Yeah, I think about a few things. One thing that comes to mind when you say that with the Sag moon, I remember my aunt when I first became fascinated with Spanish, right? So you said that you were from Argentina, and those people who watch me know I love to travel. But it was in the end of 2012, the end of the Mayan calendar, I went to Mexico. And I remember being in Mexico, and everywhere I went, I heard a particular song. And I loved the people. I loved the culture. It was wonderful. It wasn't the easiest trip, right? But those trips worth taking, those journeys worth taking aren't always the smoothest. But yeah, there was this song everywhere. So when I got home on January 1st, 2013 rather, I remember thinking, okay, if I heard that song everywhere, it must be popular. So I started searching, actually on YouTube, I started searching. And then I heard this song, and it was a song by Daddy Yankee. And when I heard this song, I had a spiritual experience when I heard this song. And I felt so sure, like I had to go back to Mexico, that I had some karma there and I had to be there to resolve it. And I didn't know if it was going to take a month or a year or 10 years, but I had to go find out. And I had to learn this language. And I just became so fascinated with the language, and Daddy Yankee's music. Really, my Spanish really comes from his reggaeton, his music, right? And so I share this because I remember
Amazing.
my aunt.
So you're kinesthetic. You're kinesthetic.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like, but my aunt, I remember at the time when I first started wanting to learn Spanish, and I said to her, "Oh my God, I really want to learn, but oh, it feels so big. It's a whole other language. My brain, I could feel it working when I was trying to learn a new language." And I remember she said to me, "Don't think of it as learning something new. Think of it as remembering what is already within you, just bringing forward that knowledge and that wisdom." And I understood what she meant, because she and I have talked about past lives a lot over the years, and she's really encouraged that. And so it is so interesting to me, as someone who's traveled extensively now, loves languages, um, how incredible it is that some places and some words and some moments feel familiar, feel like I've been here before, feel like I've done it. And it's almost like traveling is about remembering. It is about new experiences and adventure, but a big part of it is also remembering. And I never made that connection before with the Sag moon until you just said it. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's great. And yes, you know that remembering is part of learning. Because to learn, you have to connect with something you previously know to connect to a new thing. So you have to remember to learn. So remembering is very important part of learning. So I wanted to tell you two things that arise me. Sometimes talking to parents or with people that work with children, sometimes there's very simple things like, okay, this is the issue. Your son is fixed and you are cardinal. So it's a nightmare sometimes. It's very easy concept that cardinal parents, Aries, Capricorn, and with Taurus, Scorpios, Sun, or Leo, and with a lot of fixed energy, and with cardinal parents that want to go hiking, or the other way around, very intellectual and or fixed parents with a very restless Mars and cardinal child, and the parents are very intellectual and they are googling, they don't know what to do, and they're not very practical, and so they say this kid should have been born in a hiking family, in a family of hikers, and he was born maybe from two intellectuals. So sometimes kids can change, as we joke with other parents. So sometimes that adjustment, that you're a cardinal parent or fixed parent and he or she is the other, and that little bit of information can really do a lot for your expectation as a parent. Another thing I wanted to share with you, Nadiya, and your fabulous audience, is that recently I did a consultation with Colombian father who married a Filipino doctor, a woman, and they had these two wonderful boys. And they wanted to do a consultation about the boys. And I said, what's the problem about the boys? So the boys were screaming. They were 4 and 6 year olds, lovely boys. And so the father went to put the boys to bed. And I stayed with the mom. And she says, I don't understand his parenting style. And so I said, we are Latino. We are very, so this was beyond astrology. I tell him, don't worry. Your husband is a lion without tooth. Don't worry. We Latino are very enthusiastic, and sometimes we scream and shout and say, God, what are you doing? You're not having a Zoom, but it doesn't mean the same as in other cultures, so we are very passionate. And that was, the father wrote to me, telling me, "Thank you very much. My wife bought a teddy bear of a tiger to remind herself that I don't have a tooth, that I won't, that it's just, it's just very fiery. She understood it. So those little interventions can help a lot to fathers. So if you're into astrology and you like children's natal charts, regarding parenting and parenting orientation, don't assume that you have to know a lot. With little interventions, you can make huge changes. I don't know what you think about that, Nadiya.
I absolutely love it, because it isn't just about learning about your child and how to be a steward to their journey, but also it illuminates your own understanding of what kind of parent you are, what kind of parent you want to be, but also what the natural inclination might be as well. And then it all can work together to ultimately create even better relationships with the children in your life, and also the inner child within us, right? Like I'm thinking about how, okay, my parenting, I'm thinking about, again, my Sag moon. I love my Sag moon. It's the chart ruler. I love the Sag moon. Yeah, like I know that I need a lot of playtime, right? A lot of freedom, but a lot of freedom, not just for its own sake, but to wander. There's nothing like wandering with that mutable moon that helps me feel that real sense of nurturing of myself and the inner child within me as well, that more elevated perspective. I literally, sometimes when I'm in my trips and my travels or learning something new, the connections I make and the play that comes forward, the inner child that comes forward, wow, is that ever so healing, so needed. And so I'm also just thinking about, I'm just throwing this out there. We might be parents to children in our lives. We might be parents to the inner child within us, but we also might be both, right? It's not just that you're one or the other. You might be both, or you might have other children in your life that you really love and want to be a part of, and the different things that motivate you to be a part of their lives. So there's so many ways in which to engage in understanding of children's astrology, even in your own chart as an adult.
Yeah. Yes, and to yourself. And the mirror theory, from the very early fathers and mothers of astrology, Freud, Lacan, up to date, the mirror theory. Every time, I know, you meet a child in an elevator, in a hiking trip in the park, or walking your dog, or just in a restaurant, and you find this baby or this toddler or maybe teenager staring at you, smile. Like, just be a positive mirror to children in the world, because they are the future. Sometimes they write me, as it may happen to you, through Instagram or TikTok, the younger generations, and I say, "Thanks for answering me, and thanks for reading me." I say, "Why? Of course, you are the future. I have to listen to you. I have to understand what's coming." And regarding that, I don't want to go too far from open up more subjects, but the house 5, excuse my auto-referral. I have my 5th house is in Aries, am I say right?
Yes.
Aries, and I have Mars there. I have Mars in Taurus in my 5th house, and with Chiron. My firstborn is Moon in Taurus, conjunct Mars.
Wow.
Yes. And okay, so that was a roller coaster. I've been running like crazy with a Moon conjunct Mars. So the first child and the children in general that will attract you will attract into your life, but the children that you will breed, if you want to, are the first one is assigned to the first house, and children in general. The second child is the 7th house, as you may know, Nadiya. And in the 7th house, I have Saturn. My second child is a Moon in Libra conjunct Saturn. So at the beginning, I was, oh no, why this? Mars first, Saturn the second time. What am I doing wrong? So I have to completely find new levels. But my second, because I have Chiron in my 5th house, My second child has some health issues. Thank goodness, everything's fine. So it was sometimes it's not absolute determinism, but if you have Chiron in the fifth, as I do, that's why I do this course. I think because that's how I heal and how I find a meaning and how I can continue understanding how vulnerable being a mother was for me. It was very humbling and vulnerable. Yes, and first vulnerable and then strong, because Chiron finds the resources. It's a lifetime challenge, but I have lots of tools now. Especially I'm now at my Chiron return. So which happens between 49 and 50 years old. So my second child is a moon conjunct Saturn. So I at the beginning I thought I was going to be too cold or whatever that usually you associate to moon Saturn. But then I realized I was the tutor, I was the mentor, I was the one who had to lend all my Saturn for him to be able to stand up for himself, because what we want as parents is autonomy, to be able to live without us. So I have to give, so maybe
Ideally.
his first years, he's now 13, yes, his first years were very hard for him because he needed lots of stimulation and very hard work on my behalf, and of course my husband. But then it was like carrying a cross, But sometimes I ask him, how do you feel? How to feel me as a mother? To feel me. I don't ask him directly this, but game and playing is the language of children. So one way or the other, I ask him if he feels that I'm a cold mom or if I'm distant because of the Saturn, how he feels it, and it's completely the opposite. So it's like, no, you're too present, too. Yes, no. Even though there's a Saturn, it's like, don't carry the cross for me. Let me do it alone. So there's other levels, very interesting. So fifth house, first child, seventh house, second child, and then you will go to the 9. You skip one house for each child. Did you know that, Nadiya?
I didn't know you skip one house for each child. Isn't it fascinating to consider,
Wow.
right? Yeah, it's wonderful. Well,
What child are you? What number of child are you?
I am the oldest. I am the first. I have Saturn in the first house. And actually, my dad is from a family of 9, and he's the oldest in his family. My mom is from a family of 10 siblings, and she's the oldest. And I am the first grandchild, I guess you could say, the first cousin of all the endless cousins and grandkids and everything. Yeah, I was the first. Saturn in the first house. I think that's what did it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the eldest as well. Yes, I understand. I'm the Saturnian. Usually, the first one is the son or daughter of the neurosis of the obsessive, and then you start like the other kids feel more free. The second, the third, the fourth. The first one is the big icebreaker.
Well, my last little bit of revelation that I want to share in talking to you is that I have Libra on the cusp of the 5th house with Scorpio intercepted, which means that the 2 ruling planets are Venus and Mars. Now, Venus is conjunct the moon in the 6th house in my chart. Okay. So just for those students of astrology, so you can make sense, when the ruling planet of one area of life, which is the house, is in a different house, there's a connection between those 2 areas of life. The 6th house is of small animals, of your pets. And I tell you, I love, and have loved deeply the pets in my life. I never really felt like I needed to have children. I mean, I have Uranus in the 5th house. That really wasn't needed or my thing or anything like that. But my God, do I ever ache to share my life with a dog. And I so would do it if I wasn't such a free bird and needed to be so mobile, but I still consider it. And I have stayed in relationships that are not very good because I love the dog. Like this has happened twice in recent years where it's
Wow.
really like, okay, this relationship is not working, but oh my God, I love this dog so much. I cannot be without this dog.
Yeah, but it's very important what you're saying, because I think if you're, how to say, when people are very judgmental,
Yes,
when
we
you
can be
cannot
of
be,
ourselves.
you cannot
Yeah.
be. No, yeah, if you're an astrologer, you have to be, you have to put aside all your lots of biases and judgmentals, because sometimes um mothers and fathers can tell you, for example, it's very hard still nowadays, and this is from personal experience and for, from my friends and listening to so many consultations, as a psychologist and as an astrologer and as both and as a person, and it's very hard still nowadays, 2024, to be a mother alone with kids, so in absence of abuse and of extreme things and dangerous things, in absence of that, I understand and I don't judge some person that even we don't like saying it, they stay because of the kids. Maybe it's very hard for a woman to be alone with the kids. It's very hard. So maybe you have to gather strength, you have to gather resources, you got to see the timing. So sometimes people will tell you that, and oh no, you cannot do that to your children because your happiness, you're going to burden them. Okay, it's not easy. It's not easy. So people open really up to you, and you can go very deep if they sense that you are not, or because of the dog, I cannot leave him because of the dog. So you can relate. I can understand.
I can really relate.
And
Yes.
my, yeah, my third son, which should be my ninth house. I mean, in my ninth house, I have a Virgo, and I have a dog, which is a female. So my Nikita Scorpio's dog is in my ninth house. So where I have Virgo, which is assigned to sixth house, which is a pet ruler. So my third child is my Nikita, my dog.
Yes, yes, we do love, and the ways in which and the things that become our children is we're so fortunate in the modern world. We have those choices where we get to say, okay, I have all these children. Maybe you have actual kids. Maybe for me, I always felt like my books were my children or the pets are your children. But at least we have so much more freedom than ever before. And hopefully that'll spread to more and more people as they understand all the ways in which they actually do have children that come from them in one way or another. Wow, what an incredible consideration with you, Victoria. I really enjoyed meeting you. Once again, everybody, Victoria is coming to Synchronicity University as part of the March 2024 speaker series. You've got just a little bit of time left from the time that this interview is publishing to choose your tuition rate, as low as just $5 a class with our world famous choose your tuition rate at synchronicityuniversity.com. Victoria, thank you again. I loved meeting you. I loved this discussion. It was so fun.
It was fabulous.
Yes, it was
I
fabulous,
wanted to say
wasn't
I
it?
love. Yes, 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 yes. So I really enjoyed, and I'm very passionate about astrology, and to meet other fellow enthusiastic, and I love sharing all my experience, and I hope I have a long lifetime to continue learning and teaching. Because because of my son in ninth house, I love sharing. So and I love sharing my experience. And cases and all that. So I'm very happy for this opportunity. Thank you, Nadiya.
Oh, thank you, Victoria. And thank you again, everybody out there, for watching. Until we connect again, take care. Bye.